Gate 6. Madame Blavatsky, an Initiatic doorway. As you turn to leave the chamber of esoteric personalities, you hear a loud rapping followed by bells. A tingling sensation fills you along with an insatiable curiosity. Suddenly it is 1875, and you find yourself in a strange apartment in New York City. You walk into one of the several parlors or meeting rooms. It is unusually decorated with huge palm leaves, stuffed apes and tiger heads, oriental pipes and vases, cigarettes, Javanese sparrows, manuscripts and cuckoo clocks. You sit on an overstuffed chair and sense a large presence. In your mind's eye, you catch sequential flashes of the life of Madame Blavatsky, a supreme initiate. Her personality, with all of its peculiarities, seeps into you. You hear her voice echo from what sounds like a far distance. Keep the link unbroken. Do not let my last incarnation be a failure. Hence, true genius has small chance indeed of receiving its due in our age of conventionalities, hypocrisy, and time-serving. As the world grows in civilization, it expands in fierce selfishness, and stones its true prophets and geniuses for the benefit of its aping shadows. Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky is an initiatic doorway, a reflection, an objectification and a map or mirror of a process and structure that reflects who and what we are becoming and transforming into. When we contemplate her life stream, we see that the whole of her incarnation was a metaphor for bringing to light a history of our collective unconscious. Madame Blavatsky single-handedly rekindled the esoteric tradition in the West after it had been severely undermined with the rise of industrial civilization in the middle of the 18th century. She was the first to unite the Oriental or Far East wisdom with the Western teachings and place them into a global organization. This was an enormous mission for anyone, particularly a Russian female with English as her third language, in a time when the rights and roles of women in society were still very restricted. In the history of alchemy or Western Hermeticism, much less mainstream culture, there are few examples of women who are literally giants of thought. If we survey the whole of the 19th and 20th centuries, we will unlikely find any other woman, or perhaps man, comparable in the daring, breadth and scope of thought that Madame Blavatsky embodied. She was acutely aware of the imminence of the approaching end of the cycle, and that a superhuman effort was required to establish a renewed foundation for the secret doctrine. For this reason, the strength of her personality had to equal that of her mission. Blavatsky's Theosophical Society has its roots in England and India, and is still a worldwide phenomenon. Its founding was a global event, an initiatic doorway that opened into a new age. This was scarcely 137 years before 2012, the closing of the Mayan grid cycle. Blavatsky's ideas are as valid today as they were 120 years ago. Many people fail to recognize her close link with Tibet. In fact, we could say that with the creation of the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky was a Tibetan world reformer. The 14th Dalai Lama says in her book The Voice of Silence, "I believe that this book has strongly influenced many sincere seekers and aspirants to the wisdom and compassion of the Bodhisattva path." Madame Blavatsky was highly regarded as she was controversial, enduring much slander in her own lifetime. Many Buddhists did not recognize her as an official Buddhist. She took formal vows and precepts with Buddhist monks in Sri Lanka in 1888, and many religious thinkers did not believe she was a genuine religious thinker, though most acknowledge her astounding accomplishments. To understand the life work of any being within the planetary framework, we must first understand the condition and the time they were born into. From this, we can glean more insight into the meaning, validity, importance, and scope of his or her mission. Do not seek the person within the personality, but the cosmic function being performed through that person. Madame Blavatsky was born into the age of industrialization, an age of incredible optimism, where it was thought that technology would transform the world and that the human would be saved or enlightened by the machine. She was raised in an elitist Russian environment that gave her the privilege to explore the world in a way most of her contemporaries could not. Dane Rudyard said that Blavatsky's world travels were ritualistic methods of a globe encompassing all human awareness, heralding the actual emergence of planetary consciousness. Madame Blavatsky was well aware of the moment she occupied in the evolutionary trajectory, the time of the closing of one cycle and the opening of the new cycle. This was reflected throughout her teachings. She was also aware that she was confronting deeply conditioned belief patterns of the West by introducing Eastern thought. She spoke out strongly against scientific materialism as well as religious hypocrisy. She also knew that the mediumship, psychic powers, and Oriental perspective, inclusive of her apprenticeship of Master Moria, was flying in the face of conventional Western thinking. This is important to understand. Madame Blavatsky called upon her skill at synthesizing vast amounts of knowledge to describe, define, and unify the nature of existence and reality from a spiritual, non-material point of view. She opened a pathway that had been recently shut down, the pathway of the alchemists, hermeticists, and Rosicrucians. She was the first Westerner to bring the existence of the Masters into publicity, and expose the name of the two members of this brotherhood, hitherto unknown in Europe and America. This was Master Moria and Master Kuthumi. Madame Blavatsky's life can be viewed as stages of the transformative psychology of the initiate. We will revisit stages of her life as a series of 7 initiations in order to study the psychological and spiritual precepts underlying one of the most esoteric of esoteric personalities of all time. In this light, we view Madame Blavatsky as an exemplary cosmic personality, understood as an evolutionary template with a specific function. In the case of regularly initiated seers, it must be remembered that we are dealing with a long series of persons who, warned of the confusing circumstances into which they pass when their spiritual perceptions are trained to range beyond material limits, and are so enabled to penetrate to the actual realities of things. Madame Blavatsky.